but let me stop before I diverge into something else. Tyson, come on through. You co-hosting
There
and
you know.
any comments before I step out the way, man?
No, well, comment on that. I appreciate everything that you said. It's very real. I feel I've made the comment a few times after the presentations that you've made to us, where I feel the generation that I represent is a is in that same position where we're seeing we're benefiting from you all who are like, for me, y'all are my parents' generation, and y'all were the trailblazers who laid down that path to make it much easier for my generation and those that come after us to walk. And so it's fitting. And what we're doing is a way to pay homage to that and to respect that and to learn necessary lessons from that. And then adding the little bit that I'm adding with the carry on tradition piece too. It's just another layer to it. So yeah, everything that you said is so on point, and it's just the responsibility that we have. We got to do what we can do.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that comes to mind for me from like the history of our tradition, like Islamic tradition, one of my teachers years ago, he was telling me something from the story of Maryam, um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the mother of Isa, alayhi salam, and they were talking about, her birth, and when she was experiencing the birthing pains and like communicating with Allah during that time, she wasn't she was seeking some refuge from the pain. And one of the things that she was asked to do, like she was sitting down and next to a bush or a tree, and she was asked to like hold on and grab that tree. And so she's like shaking the tree
Yeah.
as she's experiencing those birthing pains.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't asked to stand up and run, or like, you got to do what you can do,
Mm-hmm.
and you got to do your part, whatever that is. And then using another story from the Anbiya, using the story of Musa alayhi salam, the same teacher was explaining how when Allah split the sea for Musa, Musa had a role in that. His role was he was supposed to take his staff and like cast his staff down. So he had something to do. Allah was going to do Allah's part in that, but Musa had to do his part as well. And before that, of course, organizing the people and standing up to Pharaoh and all of that. But he had a part to play in that. We all have our part to play. And so if we are the ones who we arrives early, we're here. We got to do what we can do, and what we do will amplify beyond this moment. And so that's just a reflection of our history, Islamic history, the history of our people, the history that we're talking about. We're here. And I mean, it's an honor to be part of that too, to be part of that community that's called to do their part and for us to answer that call.
Alhamdulillah. All right, thank you as always. And the stage and the floor and the mic is yours.
Alhamdulillah. No, appreciate it. I'll I'll be I'll be brief this morning. I'll share, but since we started the time that we did, and to make sure that we have enough time to get through everything that you're going to be presenting for us, I'll keep this one a little bit shorter. Let me see. So we're here. Okay, let me do the highlight. All right, there's that. Okay, and let me share. Okay, so then this morning, the piece from the book that I want to share is the German Coast Revolt. Some people refer to it as the Louisiana Revolt. And a quick note to make on this: at this point in the book, when we get to this story, because we've done everything pretty much chronologically, we start 1441. So just thinking about, and adding to what Imam Fahim was saying, a path that's being laid. We're almost 400 years into this tradition by the time we get to the German Coast Revolt. And this happens here in what is now known as the United States. So I think this is the first time that we're talking about something that actually takes place here in the United States. But 1441 to 1811, it's almost 400 years. So this is 400 years of a tradition of our people, whether we're talking about on the African continent, we're talking about crossing the Atlantic Ocean, whether their destination when they're crossing the Atlantic Ocean is the Western Hemisphere or it's Western Europe, a tradition of resistance, rebellion, revolution making, of understanding that we have a responsibility not just to ourselves as individuals, but to our brothers and sisters who have been thrown into this condition with us. And we have to do our part, whatever that is. And this right here, the one that we're getting ready to talk to, I had mentioned last week, I had just returned from travels. And on our trip, we went to Atlanta, Georgia. We went to Montgomery, Alabama. We were in Jackson, Mississippi. And then we were in New Orleans before coming back to Oakland. When we were in New Orleans, there were several historical sites that are tied to the German Coast Revolt. And being able to visit some of those sites, learn more while I was there. I did some documentation, recording some stuff while I was there. It gave me even more insight into what was going on, which was just beautiful and powerful. So we'll get into it. And this one right here, this image I created to represent how these brothers and sisters organized this rebellion, because in Louisiana at the time, this specific area known as the German coast, the brutality of the enslavement was so heavy. And of course, thinking about our historical timeline, this is immediately after the end of the Haitian Revolution. So the Haitian Revolution, 1791 to 1804. This happens in 1811, so 7 years later. And there's talk that some folks who were part of the Haitian Revolution, who fought in the Haitian Revolution, were in Louisiana at that time, and they were being enslaved there. And so that spirit of revolution was alive and well in the people. Not only that, this of course ties into Thomas Jefferson, third president of the United States, being able to purchase the property of, or the territory of, Louisiana from France, because Napoleon was trying to dump assets because the Haitian Revolution was so costly for France. So Thomas Jefferson is able to purchase the Louisiana territory for this incredible deal and double the territory of the United States almost overnight. And so the setting of Louisiana, the French colonizing Louisiana, you have these English descendant people who are moving into that territory as well. And then you have Germans who come into that territory. And what was really interesting too, right? So this is just coming back from one of the tours that we did. They talked about how in the cuisine of New Orleans specifically, you see the culture of all these different people. Like you'll see the influence of France in the cuisine there. You'll see the influence of the Germans. You'll see the influence of African peoples from various parts of West Africa and everything that they brought there, and how that gets mixed into this very unique cultural project that unfolded in that area. So the Germans come and they occupy a certain part of Louisiana, and people begin to refer to that as the German coast. So that becomes the setting for this major uprising. And this is something that when I was in school, when I was in public school, of course, I never learned about this. When I went to San Jose City College after I graduated from high school, then I went to San Jose State. in many of the interactions that I had with my folks in my community, whether they were from, my elders from political organizations, from Nation of Islam, the from this community here. We never talked about this one because many of us were not familiar with it because it was hidden from like the popular discourse. So in New Orleans, when we're there and we're talking about this, you'll have many people who are part of these plantation tours and other historical sites that are talking about this history. They'll mention that same thing, how in the textbooks in Louisiana, this was never discussed because intentional work was done in order to hide this history, in order to minimize the impact of the German Coast Revolt. Because in the history of the United States, this is known as the largest uprising of forcibly enslaved people. So when we begin to connect the dots, the inspiration of that trailblazing path, right? The inspiration of our brothers and sisters just liberated themselves in Haiti. Of course, we can do that too. And the geographic proximity, Louisiana isn't that far from that area. So in a temporal sense, so time-wise, 7 years. Geographically, it's close. We're dealing with the same people that the Haitians had just defeated, the French, being in control of that territory. And then, of course, the US comes in and takes control a little bit later on. But still, like, there was so much energy in the air. That path had been laid and our people were seeing it and they were inspired by what our folks had been doing for close to 400 years, but especially within the last 10 to 15 years. We got to rise up. What our people are experiencing is unjust, is unfair, and we have the right to stand up as a people to do what is right, to reclaim our freedom. So these brothers and sisters, they organized a plan. And so in the story, I'll zoom in a little bit more on the text here. I'm going to try to, if it's going to respond. Yes, it does. Okay. So in the story, I'm going to highlight this name right here. This is the brother who's known as the leader of the German Coast Revolt, sometimes referred to as the Louisiana Revolt. And as it says, people speculate that he was from Haiti, and that he fought in the Haitian Revolution. And where they launched it was on a plantation owned by a man named Andre. Sometimes it's spelled Andry. And so these brothers and sisters planned. They said, we're going to strike at a specific time. We're going to organize our people. And we're going to find ways to secure munitions, ammunition, other munitions. And we are going to fight for our freedom and our liberation. And we have a goal to march all the way down to New Orleans to destroy I'm sure some of you have traveled to New Orleans before. There's in like the main part of the French Quarter, well, right outside the French Quarter, actually, you have what is now known as Congo Square. And that was a place where, Black folks would gather. And then there were also a few other places, French Quarter and right outside the French Quarter, where they were the major auction blocks. So when you're on the Mississippi River there, Black folks would be brought off the boats and sold, right? So they had the vision of, we want to destroy the apparatus of slavery. So not only are we going to liberate ourselves, and this is, to me, when I get deeper into the reading and just the study of this, and then understanding how our people, the way that we're stereotyped when we're not the ones who are in control of our narrative, the stereotype becomes heavily individual, right? Like we're just out for ourselves. When I think about my generation, especially through hip hop and some of the cultural references that we've created, right? There's this I got my mind on my money and my money on my mind. Like that's something that people would say a lot of the times. You would hear another one that came from Wu-Tang in the 90s. cash rules everything around me. Cream get the money, dollar dollar bill, y'all. You have another one where it's like Tupac. He used to say this one sometimes. MOB is money over B, like the B word, and the B word referring to women. So a lot of that stuff, when you analyze it, it's hyper capitalistic, misogynistic, but individual. Like, I'm just thinking about myself. That's not what our people were doing. Of course, you got some of that where we got to think about ourselves. But when this when these acts were playing out, people understood that they were involved in a moment that was more than just themselves. So yeah, I'm fighting for my own individual freedom. But not only that, I'm fighting to create change that's going to impact my brothers and sisters that are also being affected by this situation in this present moment and also for the future. So in hearing that and seeing that time and time again, and that's not me like looking for something that I want to see, it's just part of the historical record. The Haitian Revolution is proof of that. We talked about Queen Nanny in Jamaica. That's proof of that. We talked about Gaspar Yanga. I mean, every instance that we look at, people have an awareness, an acute awareness of, I'm doing something for myself. I'm doing something that is also for my family, but I'm doing something for my people. And so with these brothers and sisters who had a clear goal, like where they were, the march from the plantation where this started to New Orleans is a good 45-minute drive, something like that, right? So they didn't have cars, they was walking. And they knew they wanted to, if successful in their mission completely, liberate themselves from where they were. And so that's why this path is part of this picture, because they had a goal. We will handle this business where we are, starting at the Andre plantation, but our goal is New Orleans in order to dismantle this system that's affecting all of our brothers and sisters. And so they was on the path. And this is what it looked like in the aftermath. Like, they were able to bring about major property damage to these plantations and put in curtail in some ways the economy of slavery at that time. They didn't make it to their final destination, which was New Orleans, and then their goal of destroying the apparatus of slavery within Louisiana, and New Orleans being such an important part of that apparatus. But they were successful in, we're going to stand up and we're going to fight for our people, putting fear in these people, inspiring. Again, like, what was their part of this path? They had to do what they could do in order to keep that path being laid firmly for those who were going to come after them to be able to tread that path themselves and then add more to that path for the future generations to come. And this image right here, when I did this, and I mentioned how I used AI tools in order to create these images. So I gave it a prompt. I want a plantation in the German coast area of Louisiana that is on fire. And I gave it the time of day and all that. So it gave me these images. And so I picked this image. What is very interesting to me now, after returning from this trip, this plantation looks like a plantation that my wife, my daughter, Medium, who's 2.5 years old, and I visited while we were in New Orleans. So we were down there for the Essence Festival. We had a chance to see Muhammad, Imam Fahim's son, and his daughter-in-law there, because they were vending at the Essence Fest. And then we were like, after the festival was over, so it went from Thursday to Sunday, we stayed a few extra days because we just wanted to spend time in the city and also be able to partake in the history of the city. And, let the big crowds leave, so we just have more time to move around and do what we wanted to do. So we visited a plantation, which is the closest plantation to New Orleans. I'm forgetting the name of it right now, but this is what it looked like. It looked just like this, like the structure of it. And in the history of that plantation, which we learned, it was actually built by a Black man. So he was hired in order to build it. And then some folks came in later on after it was built. And, they did some renovations to it. But this looks like the style of those plantations that are found in and around the New Orleans area or in that part of Louisiana. And the plantation that we visited, in order to add it to this story of the German Coast Revolt, as the brothers and sisters who were leading the German Coast Revolt were heading to New Orleans, they got close to that plantation that we went to visit. And that's where their effort was stopped, because you had militias, you had, military forces that were called in order to stop this rebellion and this uprising. And the plantation that we visited was the place where the trials were held for the leaders of the German Coast Revolt. So, of course, the people who are the maintainers of the system, when something happens that threatens their system, one of their responses is, we need to make examples of these people to try to get this to never happen again. So they always try that, and they're not successful, because our people have been involved in this tradition since 1441, and we have not stopped. Our people are still standing up. Our people are still fighting for freedom and liberation, not just here in the United States, globally, right? But they do what they do because they're the maintainers of that system. So they wanted to make examples of folks. So they used that plantation as the place for the court hearings and the meetings of the big minds in Louisiana who were trying to determine what laws needed to be passed, what policies needed to go into effect in order to make sure that this never happens again. So it was a trip, you know what I'm saying? And when we were there, they had these signs up saying, like, this was an important spot for the German Coast Revolt Trail, and they had this little museum built to it on that plantation ground. And so when I was talking to one of the people who worked there, I'm like, well, what was the role that this played? Because I remember seeing the name in some of the history of this plantation, but I wasn't sure what the role was. Like, no, this is where all the hearings were held, and where some of the brothers and sisters who were part of it were punished. And what were they punished with? They were punished with having their lives taken, whipped, beat, hung, heads cut off, put on pikes, you know what I'm saying? And then put outside on because where this plantation is at, like literally across the street from it is the Mississippi River. So I forgot what they called it, the Mississippi River Road or something like that. Think about it like a major trade route. So you just had a whole bunch of traffic going up and down that road every single day. So they took some of these brothers and sisters, dismembered their bodies, and they just had their heads on pikes right there on that Mississippi River Road as a visual reminder. You don't want to do that. But of course, our people still fought back, resisted, revolted, rebelled. So this is part of that history. And, like, I don't claim to be an expert. I study, I continue to study, and there's no substitute for being able to be in a place and immersing yourself in that history, because you're just going to learn so much more. Like, I've watched documentaries, read books, I've talked to people who are from the area, but being able to be there and be focused on, I want to just learn more about that history while I'm there. I learned so much more. And it'd have been great to be able to add some of that stuff to the book. And that's, the great thing about technology. I can update stuff. I can have another volume that comes out and add some of that other history to it. But it was just powerful to be there in a place where these brothers and sisters were involved in this great historical moment that influenced our people globally, but especially our people here in the United States. So that's what I wanted to share this morning. And one other thing to add real quick, I was informed yesterday that the books, the Carry On Tradition books that are at the masjid, all of those have been sold. That's great. So, Imam Fahim, I'm gonna get some more, drop them off at the masjid so we can just keep that going and keep hopefully inspiring our people with our history, and keep that same arrangement where everything that's sold just goes right back to the masjid.
Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. Thank you so much. Um, man, it's when you listen, if I think some of us, like me, meaning also, there should have been some kind of teary-eyedness starting to develop in your consciousness, uh, hearing that. I mean, put yourself into their shoes. Put yourself into the spirit and the attitude and the profound existential decision that they were all making at that time to revolt, because everybody knew what the end of the road was. Everybody knew what the end of the road was, but they still moved the way they moved. So again, I say it's necessary for us to draw on that. Now, I'm going to say this, but it's very important for, and I still want to explicitly say thank you, Tyson. I'm going to say this, but I want to preface it with don't get distracted. Don't pay attention, but don't get distracted. We have to work on a multiplicity of fronts. Mashallah, let's just limit ourselves to the political theater, the political atmosphere, the things that are becoming evident. And it's not everything that you see, meaning that oh yeah, I see this, I see it. The bigger thing is what we don't see. But the evidence by the way, let's just call it objects are moving. Like when you see when you see the trees swing and the branches swing and the leaves, floating and falling off the tree. Well, the wind is blowing. The wind is blowing. It's not some invisible creature that's moving the tree and picking the leaves, and etc. No, it's the wind. The wind is blowing, right? So we should be talking about and understanding the political winds, the way that they're blowing. I'm not going to go into what happened on the 13th, because a couple of things happened on the 13th. You had the global computer glitch, right? And then you also had the attempted assassination. And if you're not following, you should get a sense. You should get a sense of it. Don't drown in it, but keep your awareness. Keep your awareness, right? Watch as well as pray, we used to say in the Nation of Islam. Got to, and I'm going to mention just a couple of things, just a couple of items. Again, I'm not doing deep dives at this moment. There are a lot of people who have done deep dives and are doing deep dives, but because of you can make some projections. I'm not, quote unquote, I'm not uncomfortable, and I'm not really fearing contradiction to say that it's likely that Donald Trump is going to be the next president of the United States. I'm not going to try to, do all the stepping stones that lead to this and guarantee that, blah, blah. But I'm comfortable, I'm settled, I'm rested in that as a fact, a foregone conclusion for right now. Okay. And I want to tell you, it's not necessarily all bad. Let me get this and take this off the board in terms of that. The Quran says it may be that you dislike a thing through which Allah brings about a great deal of good. All right. It may be that you love something that you should hate and hate something that you should love. And I'm not expressing or inviting, oh, we should love Trump, but I'm saying don't get distracted, in terms of what you see on the surface, and then react to what you see on the surface, and think that that reaction, which is a reflex reaction, is the right reaction. Sometimes that's the very wrong reaction to it. And I have so many hadith and other things to go along with that, but I don't want to spend a lot of time there. You do some of your own homework. Look up the Dajjal, and Dajjal transliteration, and it says that in the end he's going to be carrying fire and water. He said when he comes, you see the fire and the water. He said, jump into the fire, because what's going to look like is going to be hot and burning is going to be cool and peaceful. And what looks like is cool and peaceful is going to be hot and burning. So the illusion that is cast in the world, you have to be capable of distinguishing, oh, that looks like water, that's fire. Oh, that looks like fire, but that's water. And that's the guidance of God is needed in order to act in that way. Despite all, let me mention this and more. Things that need to be understood well, in my opinion, right now, that we need to have a working understanding from the practical side. This is the tie your camel side of the political winds, right? Well, there's one of the obvious things, in my view, is you really need to understand the history, the function, etc., of Zionism, political Zionism. You need to understand that. And then also, and again, you have to base it on whether you want to do some of your own original reading, or there's so many resources out there to get an understanding of that. The other two things are the Great Replacement theory. You need to get an understanding of that. Wherever you get it from, get that Great Replacement theory, and then also Project 2025. Project 2025. And again, each one of us should have a resource that can help us grasp it, because doing that originally ourselves that's not your wheelhouse. It's like, nah, I ain't got time. I don't have the motivation to go into all that. That's fine, but find those who are. I inshallah intend to do a more summary treatment. Didn't start my backup. Intend to do a more summary treatment of all these things, so as to help those who listen to us get a working understanding of it. I'm saying all these things because there's more to come. I won't say what it is. Yeah. But there's more to come. You have people that say the best is yet to come, and some say the worst is yet to come. The point is there's more to come, especially in and around and after the November election. And I said right here, this is not financial advice. I have to tell you that this is not financial advice. Do your own due diligence, etc., and all of that. But I have to tell you, the Bitcoin. Let me just say it. It's a once in a lifetime, in a generation, in an epoch kind of phenomena. I can show you what my level of conviction and confidence relative to it is grounded in Allah's will and human nature and how Allah uses the human being to solve human problems, right? And money is a big problem and has been a big problem in the nature of the world, in the world of power, etc. I'd have to tell you, Bitcoin is a solution uh, that is unstoppable. It is unstoppable. And it doesn't matter. It's like just get a little piece of it if you desire. This is not financial advice. But it's going to replace all before all is said and done. I'm not saying this is going to happen in our lifetime, but enough of what I'm talking about is going to happen in our lifetime. Allahu Alam going to happen in our lifetime, such that you will be very happy that you had whatever that little bit is. Stop looking at whatever you see as the price right now. Stop looking at that. Stop looking at that. Get you some. This is not financial advice. That's a rhetorical statement. Set it and forget it. Just whatever. It's like, okay. I got some. So, okay. I don't need to talk about it no more. That's fine. You'll be very pleased, inshallah. Okay, so I had to give that other part of that so that you know, because that's a train and a boat that's leaving the port and a train that's leaving the station and a plane that's taking off. It's not coming back. It's not coming back. If you on a zero on that, the way that the world is going and what's going to be in the world, the nature of existence, economy, et cetera, such it is right now, and you have none of that, it's like, just think about the most dystopian type movies that you can think about. Max, what is it? Max Road, who's that? Whatever that crazy movie is. Mad Max. The Mad Max world, the Book of Eli world, all these whatever the other worlds, what's that? The Hunger Games and all that. Snow Train or something like that. I'm telling you, that's going to be the condition of those who miss this particular train. And no matter what it is, it's an opportunity. Just you need to, even if you're on the boat, I don't care if you're in the bottom of the boat, if you're on the top deck. Point is, you're on the boat. All right, enough of that. So my Monday thing. Maybe I need to revisit. In fact, I probably do, but revisit that on the Monday wealth creation and preservation piece, because it is even more emphatic. Now, what's the connection here? I know W.D. Muhammad, now the others going to come, but I have a sense of obligation to say these things to you because it is in context. Donald Trump used to be not a fan of Bitcoin, okay, as with so many others, Jamie Dimon, which is the Goldman Sachs people, so many others, blah, blah, blah. BlackRock may be in your lens, scope of perception. If not, look it up. It's very much connected with this recent assassination attempt. Whether in what role it played, I'm not saying. I'm saying, but it does come into the frame when we start talking about this. Donald Trump, he's supposed to be a key speaker at the upcoming Bitcoin conference. And all the news, the expectation is that he's going to be proposing that Bitcoin become one of the reserve currencies for the U.S. Treasury. That's not small in any possible way, because for us, right, to the extent that it is, gold and silver and those kinds of assets play that role. So Bitcoin has gone from a Ponzi scheme and rat poison and useful to human traffickers and drug traffickers, blah, blah, blah. It's gone from that to the presidential, likely president, the next president saying, I am pro Bitcoin, and with so many others who used to be against it. What that means for it is at this moment, it's immeasurable. It's immeasurable. So that's a part of that thought. It may be that you dislike a thing through which Allah brings about a great deal of good. So the point is that to have a little bit and to be able to ride with it, because it's going to a place that's immeasurable. I want to say this and that. You can look it up on YouTube. It's all over YouTube. Just tap in price predictions for Bitcoin. Let's just say from 2024 to 2030. It's just gonna be just a river of YouTube on there. So you have those that go from 250,000 to 1 million to 10 million to etc. There's a guy, Michael Saylor, talks about Bitcoin as having economic immortality, right? So no, this is not financial advice. Do your own due diligence. Never risk what you're not willing to lose. All of those caveats for that. But if you want your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren not to be, unfortunately, but it is, and we've been getting this history of Haiti, the other, the islands, and all you got to do is just go visit, see what the conditions of our people are, see who has their hands on the levers of economic power in those places. And if you don't want your children and your grandchildren to be in that condition in America, honor the ancestors as we do always. But the reality of the future condition of our children and grandchildren rests on what we do for them that has much more, that has assurance of putting them on a higher plane and a more protected position and less vulnerable to the powers that are reasserting themselves now. We have an obligation to do that. And now is the time to do that. It's not, there's a speaking of rap artists, right? I don't know who was it had Tyson. You can speak to it. I mean, just the idea. Somebody said if you're reading this, it's too late. Whose piece was that? Said if you're reading this, it's too late.
I think that's a dude from Canada.
It had to do with the Drake Kendrick beef.
Yeah, I think it's him, Drake.
Okay, yeah. So it's like, if you're reading this, it's too late. So it's like, there's gonna come a time where it's like, oh man, I was told about that. Man, that might be that moment where it's like, well, if you're reading this, if you're saying this, if you're seeing this, it's too late. And I'm talking to you now because it's not too late right now. Let's move on, Fahim. Okay, thank you for your patience. This ultimately, what gets put up on the on YouTube, Facebook, this segment may not be in it. So, mashallah. So you make note, please. Now, for the continuing, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, for continuing to pave the road of the master narrative. Let's see. All right. All right. So we're continuing with the Islamic ethics. This is episode 6. Islamic ethics and the role of W.D. Farad and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. May Allah forgive his sins and grant him paradise. In shaping Imam W.D. Muhammad, radiallahu anhu, this is a continuation of that aspect of it. And so this is it. So let's state this here, that what we are, and when today finishes, inshallah, at least as much as I have prepared for today, all of this is still in response to those who only see in what W.D. Farad did and the Nation of Islam was, all they see in it is bid'ah, innovation, that is un-Islamic, shirk, that is disbelief, rejection, association of partners with God. All they see, and see something that is to be put aside, dismissed, denied, rejected. There are those who that's all they see. That's all they see. They don't see anything else in it. I understand. I get why they do it. Mashallah. I don't point, quote unquote, a finger of blame at them based on the frame that they are seeing it from. Okay, so our conversation and our contribution to the reply to that is to understand this. At times, actions that may seem morally wrong when judged by conventional standards can be seen as appropriate and essential when viewed from a higher spiritual and ethical perspective. And we gave several examples in our last portion. We talked about Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, and the king's beaker in his brother's bag. We talked about Musa traveling with the wise man Al-Khizr, and some others that don't come to mind right now. The idea is that God has shown us and given us examples as to how, by rule and by standard, under normal circumstances, yes, it would be wrong to do this or that. But by my will, by my design, and therefore with my approval, then this particular action is taking place. And then, and especially when it does not represent a pattern of behavior, it represents a circumstantial acceptance under certain conditions. And that's a thing that has to be understood when you want to pass judgment on W.D. Farad, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Imam W.D. Muhammad even, because he doesn't he doesn't get a pass from some of these critics for that same. Oh, you a part of the same thing. You just a continuation of the same thing. So all y'all in the same bag. It's fine. So just understand that to do so is to put the wrong frame on it. It's a frame that's justified from where you stand. I get it, but that's I'm trying to help you get clearer on seeing something that you may not understand. So let's move on with that very process. So the ex-chattel slave and the victim of the experimental clinic needed to be immunized and inoculated from its effects. That is, why was this particular approach taken? Excuse me. One of the explanations is something had to be done. There was an experimental clinic that put the ex-chattel slave in a certain condition, and those who are their offspring, their subsequent generations, they suffer the after effects of that experimental clinic, of the peculiar institution of slavery, and something needed to be done to address those particular effects, right? So one of the ways of understanding that whole process is it was a kind of inoculation, a kind of immunization. And the general paradigm for immunization is through inoculation, which involves introducing a controlled amount of an antigen into the body to stimulate the immune system to develop immunity against the specific pathogen without causing the disease itself. So all of these were put in these medical physiological terms. These essentially were the hopes of the hopes of the founder, particularly. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad did not know this that we're talking to you now, and the followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad did not know this that we're speaking on. It is Imam Muhammad Rahimahullah that gave us the explanation, the clarity, which I'm going to continue to share as we go on, to say, look, this is what happened. This is why it happened that way, right? This is why it was necessary. Right? That's what Imam Muhammad did. And this is, I'm explaining him in terms of what he has explained to us regarding that, so that you, whoever the hearer is, don't fall victim to rejecting something that you should not reject, or judging something upon the wrong frame. And judging upon that wrong frame, you wind up turning away from the very blessing that Allah, especially if you are a descendant of ex-chattel slave and you are a descendant of victims of the experimental clinic, if you reject it, then you reject the very blessing that Allah has actually sent you to solve a problem, even if you don't recognize that you have that problem. But everybody who is a descendant of those ex-chattel slaves and those victims of the experimental clinic, you carry the effects. If it's latent, if it's suppressed, that would mean that it's not apparent in your life that, oh, you're still suffering the effects of slavery, quote unquote. If it's not apparent, it's latent. There are certain circumstances and conditions, etc., that may, in fact, cause it to come to the surface, right? Or also, you are operating comfortably in a state that is lower than your actual level of potential performance, because you subscribe to, let's just make it short, well, don't rock the boat, stay in your lane, don't revolt against that, what can you do after? Maybe you're in that state, but let's move on. So the strategy, when we talk about this immunization, another way of speaking of that immunization is Farad decided to fight fire with fire, right? And what that means for this narrative is that his decision was to fight the white supremacy master narrative with the black supremacy master narrative. This is not his language, and this is not even Imam Muhammad's language per se. This is contemporizing. This is what was actually done. The way to say and understand the fundamental strategy that he undertook when facing what arose, or what arrived, or what came in consequence of the total emasculation and dehumanization and all of that, all of those processes, which we recapped in a couple of episodes ago. All of that, that's what he was faced with. It's like, okay, this is it. It's rooted in this. It has the power of this. Their connection with it is that. And so, okay, what strategy should I use to respond to this? In the end, and in summary, it's fighting fire with fire. It's the immunization inoculation model. It's giving them some of the disease that caused the disease, but not in such a way that they would be the disease or have the disease, but it would awaken and bring to life their natural immune system, which pushes back against those things that had been imposed upon them to cause them to think and be unnatural as human beings. We need to wipe out the effects of the poison, the toxin, the disease that had been imputed and that had been instilled in them, even at the genetic level, had been instilled in them to such a point where it all seemed natural for them to be in a way that is contrary to their own humanity and their own best destiny. That's the problem that was being faced in that moment. And so a decision has to be made. How do you fight against that? Well, immunization, inoculation, fight fire with fire. What did it? White supremacy. White supremacy, and not to my progressive chief, Salim, Imam Salim Mu'min. It's like there's no such thing as white supremacy. I agree. I agree. But that thing that carries that label is whatever does that, that's the label that's on it right now, white supremacy. Allah is supreme, we know that. And that's my brother. No shade. I love him, you know, alhamdulillah, but I mean, we need to hear more from him. And pick from his tree, draw from him as a resource, all of that. But moving on with this topic, fight the white supremacy master narrative with the black supremacy master narrative. That's what he decided. And there's a slide long ago. Long ago in the context of these presentations, I restated in paraphrase. You know, there are people who take the idea of social constructs, and they take social constructs, and this is from the the so-called postmodernist philosophy. You need to hear these words because these things they're operating in a society. So even if you don't know them, they are at work vis-a-vis the elite in the society and the institutions of this society and the strategies in this society. You need to know where they come from, right? So even like when we talked about or we mentioned the critical race, no, didn't mention that. Moving on. That's another subject, but that's an attempt on quote unquote abbreviation. That's an attempt on the black side to respond to it. But in my view, I haven't gotten into the weeds on it, but the principle of it seems to me the same. If there's something that I'm not getting, then I can be cleared up, and I invite the clarity. But that being said, the idea is it's from postmodernism, from a French guy from maybe a century or more ago. In any case, but now it has a new embodiment in what is called the Great Replacement theory, and that's driving so much of the thinking there. But going back to the idea of the social constructs, so that the idea of the social construct is that, so you have the postmodernists who they say that, well, since everything is social construct, these are the ones that gave us male is a social construct, female is a social construct, monogamy is a social construct. So therefore, all social constructs are relative to whoever the makers of them are. Okay, that's the way you see it. I see it otherwise. So your reality doesn't have to be my reality. So I am, whatever. The alphabet community. I'm going to move on. I don't want to spend that time. The point is that so those who have this idea about social constructs all being morally relative, they're saying the idea is that we should get rid of all social constructs and just whatever you want to do or whoever you want to be and however you want to see things and say things are, well, you have the right to do that because everything else is just made up by somebody else who just want to impose their power on you. See, that's the narrative of the so-called postmodernists, and so therefore they are at work wrecking all the established traditional institutions. That's their revolution. Tear up everything, break down everything, and that also is connected with socialism, Marxism, etc. So they're philosophies. They're actually those who say, I don't absolutely subscribe to this, but in line with what we're talking about, it said all of us are the extension of the ideas of some dead philosopher. All of us are the extensions of the ideas of some dead philosopher, meaning that the ideologies of philosophers are what provides a framework for many, if not most, and / all of our institutions And so they're dead, but their ideas are still alive in those institutions. And the people who are exponents and experts, if you will, with regard to those